Okay, let's go to the another method, that equivalent annual cost method. So what is this equivalent annual cost method is there? Okay, so we are knowing that present work and compound amount method. Okay, compound amount factor CAF and PWF. Then equivalent annual cost method. In this method, or this method is to compare the annual cost of obtaining services from different equipments. So this particular method compare annual cost of obtaining services from different equipments. So for example, annual cost is nothing but capital recovery plus operating cost. For example, if you have taken the, suppose, JCB, the capital cost of that JCB, suppose 10 lakh rupees, is it right? And that JCB is on the rent, that is 1000 rupees per hour. Okay, so that, what is the annual cost of that JCB? What is the annual cost of that JCB? Suppose that 10 lakh rupees invest capital cost is there. If that is for 10 years, then in 1 year, the 10% of the total cost, that 1 lakh rupees, should be recovered. Plus operating cost, 1 hour, 1000 rupees. So how much operating cost he will generate? And that total cost is nothing but annual cost. Is it right? So in 1 year, whether it can be generated, it can be recovered capital cost of that. That means every year the capital recovery should be of 1 lakh rupees. And then after, from that operating cost should be added. In the equation 1, capital recovery is denoted by CR, capital CR. Okay, what is the capital recovery? How it is calculated? P minus L, okay, P minus L into capital recovery factor plus L, capital L into I. Okay, what is that capital recovery factor? Capital recovery factor is I into the bracket 1 plus I raised to n divided by 1 plus I raised to n minus 1. Okay, into L into I. What is the formula? In this formula we are using that notation. What is the meaning of that notation? Where P is the cost of equipment. What is the cost of equipment? Okay, so that is the initial cost, we can say. N is the life of equipment in years. How many years we can use that equipment? That is life of equipment in years. I is the interest rate, and L is the salvage value. Salvage value. What is that salvage value? That is every year certain value is demolition. That is called salvage value. Here, in what are the bracket things are there? That is I into the bracket 1 plus I raised to n divided by in bracket I plus 1 plus I raised to n minus 1 is called capital recovery factor, denoted by CRF. Okay, and then following table gives the CRF of at different values of annual cost period. Means single payment PFW in first year, then equal payment series PFW2 and CRF CRF. Okay, so as initial your single payment is more and CRF is also more, but as time passes the second TWF is goes on increasing and CRF goes on decreasing. So to understand this particular table, how it will be there, let's take one example. The cost details of two equipments are given below. Find out the most economical one. So company want that to purchase these two equipments, equipment number 1, equipment number 2, and whatever the comparative things are there for equipment 1 and for equipment 2 is shown in the table. Initial cost, that is P value, is 15,000 and for second it is 25,000. Then annual operating cost, that annual operating cost for both the equipments is shown like this. For equipment 1 800, for equipment 2 500. Life, both equipments are having 6 years life and interest rate is 5% for both the equipment. Once this is understood, we have to, and salvage value L 1000 and 4000. So that value is also given to you. Then capital recovery. Whatever the capital recovery is there, that is P minus L into the bracket, what is that capital recovery factor plus L into R. So value of CRF for 5%, that I is 5% and N is 6 years, can be seen from the table which is 1970. Okay, so if I go to this table, that previous table here, okay, so 5 years and value of CRF is 1970. So this is the CRF value. Okay, that is the capital recovery factor value 1970. Okay, then this 1970, if we consider, or here you can calculate that by putting the values here. Okay, so whatever the 5% is there, if you put, then you can calculate that value also. Okay, here 6 is there. Okay, so that value of CRF is coming as a 0.1970. Is it right? So like this, that CRF value we have calculated. Then if you go to the further, what are that further things are there, that we have to calculate the things. Okay, so if I calculate the things, that capital recovery for equipment number 1, if I put the values in that, then it gives me, or whatever the values are there. If you don't want to refer that table, you can put I and N value in this formula. You will get that CRF value, that is 0.1970. And if you put that value in this above formula, that capital recovery, 15,000 is the first cost, salvage value 1000 into CRF factor plus 1000, that is L, salvage value into I, that order 5%, 5 by 100, that is 5%. So if you calculate all these things, then you will get the capital recovery as 2808, and this is for equipment number 1. And if same CRF if you put for equipment number 2, you will get capital recovery as 4337. Okay, 4337. Then total annual cost. Okay, the total annual cost is calculated by capital recovery plus operating cost. So operating cost is already given to us. Okay, that operating cost is 800 rupees for equipment 1 and 500 rupees for equipment 2. If you put these costs into this formula, that total annual cost, capital recovery plus operating cost, total annual cost of equipment number 1 is 3608, and total cost of equipment number 2 is 4337 plus 500 is equal to 4837. That means for equipment number 2, the total cost, 1 year cost, annual cost is 4837, and for equipment number 1, the total cost or annual cost is 3680. Then here the annual cost of equipment 1 is less. That means annual cost of equipment 1 is less. That's why equipment 1 should be selected. So here you are having two alternatives in front of you, and by using this capital recovery method or total annual cost method, you have selected that equipment 2 should be purchased, or equipment sorry, not 2, equipment 1 should be purchased, because equipment 2 is having more annual cost. Okay, so once again we will go through this example. So equivalent annual cost method. So if more than one equipment is required to purchase, then these are compared based on this method, that is name is equivalent annual cost method. So we have to calculate the annual cost of the equipment. How to calculate annual cost? Annual cost is calculated with the help of capital recovery plus operating cost. Then how to calculate that capital recovery? That capital recovery can be calculated by the using formula P minus L into capital recovery factor plus L into X. What is the capital recovery factor? Capital recovery factor is in the bracket, curly bracket, I in small bracket 1 plus I raised to n divided by 1 plus I raised to n minus 1. Okay, here in this particular formula, P is the cost of equipment, N is the life of equipment in years, I is the interest rate, and L is the salvage value. Okay, so if you are not looking to this particular table, this is a standard table is provided to you. Okay, 5% interest factor for annual compounding. So for 6% annual interest, another table may be there. For 7%, another table may be there. For 8%, another table may be there. So this table is for 5% interest factor. Okay, so this table is provided to you. And if this table is not provided to you, with the help of this formula, we can calculate the capital recovery factor. Then this is the example is given to us, that cost of two equipment are given below, find out the most economical one. So out of these two equipment, which is the economical one, that we have to find out based on the equivalent annual cost method. By comparing the annual cost of both the equipment, we have to find out the best equipment. What is the table suggest? Initial cost. Initial cost is 15,000 for equipment 1. For equipment 2, it is 25,000. annual operating cost. Okay, annual operating cost. It is 800 rupees for equipment 1 and 500 rupees for equipment 2. For both the cases, life period is 6 years and interest rate is 5%. If the interest rate and life of both the equipment, if it is different, then we have to calculate two different CRF. Okay, that capital recovery factor. As for both the equipment, life is same and interest rate is same. That's why single factor CRF, that capital recovery factor, can be used. Otherwise, we have to calculate different. Then both salvage value is given. Salvage value is 1000 rupees and it is 4000 rupees respectively for equipment number 1 and for equipment number 2. Okay, what is the salvage? What is the salvage? Salvage value means what are the things which can be damaged during accident, etc. And these things can be saved. So disaster, that during operations some certain things may be I can say damaged. Okay, then that salvage value we should consider. Then capital recovery. Before that capital recovery, we should calculate capital recovery factor, and if you put the values of I and N in the curly bracket formula, you will get the value of 0.1970. And that 1970, as it is similar to the both the equipment, we did not require to calculate 2 times. It is 1 time, it is sufficient. Okay, so that whatever the CRF is there, that CRF calculated and it is put in the capital recovery formula. That capital recovery is P minus L, 15,000 minus 1,000 into CRF plus that 1,000 into interest rate, that is 0.5. If you put there, then these particulars gives you the salvage total recovery capital recovery as a 2,808 rupees for equipment number 1, and for equipment number 2 it will be 4,300 and 37 rupees. Okay, so like this, if you make the calculations, equipment 1 gives capital recovery as 2808 and equipment 2 gives capital recovery 4337, and in that capital recovery you are required to add operating cost of that equipment. Then you will get the total annual cost, and total annual cost of equipment 1 will be 3608 and total annual cost of equipment number 2 is 4837. Here the equipment number 1 annual cost is less as compared to equipment number 2. Hence, equipment number 1 is selected. Okay, and it will be purchased. So this is the one method or simple method for calculating the equivalent annual cost. Based on that, you have selected equipment number 1. So here you are making the comparison. Okay. Then one more example is there. The following are the data for two equipment suggest whether to purchase the equipment or not. Okay. Existing equipment and proposed equipment. So first example we have taken as a both equipments are new one, but here the replacement is there. What is that replacement? Existing equipment is right now with us, and if we purchase new equipment, what do we do? Then for first or existing equipment, market value is 4,000 rupees. And what are the new equipment is there, proposed equipment, the installation cost is 90,000 rupees. Overhauling charges to make it work for next 5 years is 20,000 rupees. Means you have to go for maintenance and proper oiling, etc. other things. Then that cost for next 5 years to make it proper workable condition, the amount is required 20,000. And here the expected life is 15 years. And here for existing equipment, expected life is 5 years. Resale value 30,000. If you go for it to resell it, 30,000. If you sell the proposed equipment, resale value is 10,000 rupees. Maintenance cost rupees 200 per year more than proposed equipment. And maintenance cost per year is rupees 100. So for proposed equipment 100, here 200 rupees per year more than proposed. Means here maintenance cost is rupees 300 per year. Interest rate 10%, 10%. Okay. Then here life of the equipment is changing. Okay. Life of the equipment is changing. So your CRF factor is also changing. So for N 5 years, that life 5 years and interest rate 10%, CRF is 0.2638. But for like 15 years at 10%, CRF factor is 13147. Okay. So once you calculate this, then we have to go for solution. That existing equipment. What is the existing equipment? 4,000 is today's. Sorry, 40,000 is today's value. Then 20,000 is the overhauling charges, and resale value is 30,000. Okay, so resale value I have minus it. So 40 plus 20, 60 minus 30, so 30,000 is there. Then CRF factor is there, and L, that is the salvage value, resale value is 30,000, 10% at 10%. And for proposed equipment, installation cost is 90,000, resale value is 10,000, that is salvage value is 10,000 into that CRF factor, and 10,000 is salvage value at 10%. So capital recovery is 10,914, and here capital recovery is 11,617. Then operating cost, that is maintenance per year, that is CR plus operating cost, so 200 more than the proposed equipment, plus 200 plus 100, so 300 into 300 plus this 10,914, total cost is 11,214. And the proposed equipment total annual cost is 11,617 plus 100 rupees as a maintenance per year, so it will be 11,717. Okay, so existing equipment involves lower total annual cost, and proposed equipment should not be purchased. So as there is a difference of 500 rupees, but that 500 rupees total annual cost can be saved with the old equipment. And here whatever the life of the both equipments are there, it is different. Okay, so same example or by same method, you can compare between two old criteria, that means old equipment and new equipment, whether it should be replaced or not, or if you want to purchase a new equipment and you are having two options, you can compare with that two equipments for annual cost method, and you can take the decisions. So uh, this is the I can say this is the one method of comparison. Okay, so by such a comparison, we can take the proper decisions whether we should go further. That means whether we should purchase option number one or equipment number one, or equipment number two and option number two, or we should go further with existing equipment, or we should go for purchasing of proposed equipment. This is the one method of equivalent annual cost method, the comparison of two equipments based on the annual cost method. Okay, so this is the another example we have taken for the same, that is equivalent annual cost method. Okay, so